Hello, my name is Alexander Graham Bell, and I was born March 3rd, 1847, in Edinburgh, Scotland. My mother's name was Eliza Grace Simmons, and my father, Alexander Melville Ball. Through my story, I was best known as an inventor first, a scientist second, and a teacher third, but I took pride most in my ability to teach in schools for deaf individuals. A large reason for this is because my mother was almost deaf throughout most of my life and became completely deaf later on in my life. And my father taught and authored books about elocution, which means making speech clear and expressive. I looked up to my father and respected his work ethic, and so naturally I attempted to follow in his scholastic footsteps. I was homeschooled until age 11, at which point I attended Royal High School in Edinburgh. I was very bored with school and was not a good student. I felt my best exploits would always be studies in my own interests instead of what everyone told me to be interested in, and that one can accomplish more if they follow their own interests. One time I was husking grain and dreamt of a machine that could husk it faster than I could. So I invented one. Why make work harder? When I was 15, I moved with my grandfather to London and continued working on my machines, which included at this time a talking robot, which included a windpipe and a mouth that moved when sounds would blow through the windpipe. At age 21, I went to the University College London, but there were family struggles that were taking a toll on my well-being. My two younger brothers had already passed away due to tuberculosis complications, and my parents and I were afraid it would also happen to me. This led to my parents and me moving back to North America, partially due to the recommendation from doctors who documented an uptick in my health after moving across the Atlantic Ocean. By 24 years old, I was teaching at the Boston School for Deaf Mutes and would eventually open my own school of vocal physiology and mechanics of speech, where I would be a professor as well. During this time, I was invested heavily in trying to learn how to transmit several messages across a telegraph system over a single wire, and I was hoping this would lead to me attempting to try and do the same with human voices. I was reading a lot of Hermann von Helmholtz's writings. He was a German scientist. While reading this German text, I made a mistake that would eventually aid me greatly in my searches. I believed that Helmholtz had already achieved turning speech into electricity, which was not the case. Me believing this eventually pushed me further and faster down this path of invention than if I hadn't made the mistake. I knew that there was already a system created that could transmit clicks down a telephone line, and I was intent on doing more than that. Scientists and inventors would gain recognition and aplomb if they were to take ready-made challenges of one-upping other pioneers. In 1868, Joseph Stearns had already invented the duplex, which could transmit two messages at once over a single line. The Western Union Telegraph Company bought the rights to this invention, and they hired Thomas Edison to detract other inventors from buying similar stake in this system. I was confident that I could eventually create a system that could do at least 10 lines at the same time, putting the two-message system down the pole some. But I had incredible competition. Elisha Gray was intent as well on inventing something similar. Gray was a visionist contemporary whose work I had incredible respect for. In 1874, I invented the phonautograph using the ear of a cadaver, which quickly garnered the attention of investors in my work, namely two wealthy investors named Gardner Hubbard and Thomas Sanders. With their aid, I was able to hire Thomas Watson, an electrical engineer who would help allow me to expedite my pace and timetables for all my studies. With an assistant at my side with proper funding, my work further took flight. Using these funds and the time allotted to me, I was able to progress significantly in my search to create the world's first telephone, a device that could transmit the human voice over a medium. Everyone knows that everything is fair in love and war, and Elisha Gray and I one-upped each other consistently in our search for the telephone. He pulled information from my research for his work, and I did the same. On February 14th, 1876, I filed a patent of sounds transmission successfully just 2 hours before Gray filed one on a similar method. Much of our work was in the other's invention. This made for a controversial race to the patent, but I was confident in my work. I was awarded the patent on March 7th, 1876, from the National Patent Office. It is considered to be one of the most valuable patents in our world's history because of the trajectory the science would eventually be on, with communication having little bounds and progressing royally into the 21st century with phone applications and cell phones alike. 3 days later, after I received the patent, on March 10th, 1876, I spoke the first words over this transmittal system, calling to my assistant, "Mr. Watson, come here. I want to see you." I was successful in my endeavor, despite having to combat approximately 600 lawsuits for the legality of my patent. I became independently wealthy off of the Bell Telephone Company that Gardner Hubbard was able to help me organize, but I sought more adventure and more findings. I sold the majority of my stocks in the company and set out for more. I kept a foothold in the door of the company and was a face to the public, but privately I continued working on other ways to assist the scientific community. In 1880, I was awarded the Volta Prize, which is given for achievement in the electrical sciences. I used the money off of that award to help build an institution that would study deaf individuals and helping to improve their lives, something I know that my father and mother would be proud of. I began to utilize information from the study involving the photovoltaic effect, which is a theory involving the creation of voltage and electrical current after being exposed to light. All great inventions are conceived on the shoulders of the men and women who created theories before them, right? This theory helped me invent the electrical bullet probe, which is an early version of today's metal detector. I utilized this science after finding out that doctors could not locate the bullet that was used to assassinate President James A. Garfield in July of 1881 with the technology of the times. Utilizing the balance of induction in this equipment, there would be a sound emitted when a metal object was brought within a certain distance of it. In the 1890s, I shifted my attention again and took interest in heavier than air flight. And being inspired by the works of the Wright brothers, along with many others, I founded the Aerial Experiment Association in 1907. I did not take hold in these other interests for my public image, but instead to directly apply my ambition to ways in which I felt I could help mankind. The work I was able to provide at this company helped assist Glenn Hammond Curtis, who ended up being one of the leading national manufacturers of aircraft and greatly assisted in our nation's progression in World Wars I and II. I also, near the turn of the century, became the president of the National Geographic Society for 5 years, and later helped my son-in-law president the society. and recommended that the magazine that would eventually come out involve more photography and less write-ups, knowing that imagery is a source of incredibly good substance unknown to many individuals that lived before certain upgrades in technology. My other important inventions include the photophone, the vacuum jacket, which would eventually turn into today's respirator model, and the hydrodrome, which was a modified boat that could lift itself out of the water to gain more speed. These inventions have aided hospitals, aircraft, and American businesses well into the 21st century. I passed away on August 2nd, 1922.